Hello, Jim.
Hello, Sarah.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Pruning the Final Rose. It is February, Jim, and you know what that means? Black History Month. And I bring that up because I am, for those people that know me, I'm not a huge music person, but when I do listen to music, I listen to generic playlists that are put together for me. And so recently I've been listening to Confidence Boost. And there have been a lot of like very strong female artists on there. Some Lizzo, some Beyonce. Um, so we are getting into formation. Beyonce, fun fact, I don't know, Jim, if you know that the stylist that was on this episode of The Bachelor recently is also Beyonce's stylist.
No, I definitely did not know that. I did wonder whether I was supposed to know who the stylist was. Like, is
I
this?
didn't know.
I didn't know if it was somebody from Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, which I watched in its first iteration, but I have not kept up with since then. This person whose name I apologize evades me is someone to know.
I think so. I believe so. I read it in an article after I watched the show last night. And that seemed to be a pretty, yeah. You know what? Like, there's so much to talk about in this episode, and I also want to keep it concise, but I do want to acknowledge that it is Black History Month, and I had a lot of issues with last night's episode. And I am just very upset for Matt James that I feel like his season is being hijacked by a lot of like problematic women. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I've been thinking about our metaphor of pruning, when it comes to the roses.
Mhm.
And, pruning is a very delicate art.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, you are using this blade to increase the likelihood that the flower is going to flourish. But that doesn't mean that things happen sometimes. And
You have to let it die.
I just don't know if perhaps I thought several times last night, is this the season where I accidentally lop the head off of the final rose?
I thought that myself.
Yes. So
Cringeworthy is the word that I'm going with from last night's episode. There were just so many instances where I just wanted to turn off the TV and kind of felt like I don't know that I can keep going with this series and this franchise. Like, this was supposed to be the season to push the needle forward. And I feel like we are taking so many steps back based on last night's episode.
yeah, the way that I would say it is that I would not go so far yet as to say that any of the things that have happened to Matt James or during Matt James' season are explicitly tied to racism. But again, in the spirit of the month,
Mm-hmm.
where we celebrate not just the fact that there are Black people who made history in America, but that in many ways, the Black people of America have made some of the most crucial, impacts on our own collective history, that I too had hope coming into this season that Matt James might be the Bachelor, or might be the Bachelor at the time, that was going to take us to, I don't know, like a new
Mm-hmm.
elevated enlightenment when it comes to relationships. But instead, I feel like Matt is kind of the eye amidst a hurricane,
Mm-hmm.
that is not of his making at all. In fact, if anything, he does kind of come in and bring this calming presence, even if temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
And the women can't help but say nice things about that out of one side of their mouth, while out of the other side of the mouth, they're, they cannot stop cutting each other down.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that February ends better for Matt on this show than it has begun, because, whoo boy.
Yeah. Woof. It's a
Woof.
lot. So speaking
No,
of, you said Matt James is kind of the eye of this hurricane. So speaking of eyes, I don't know, Jim, if you have seen, there are a lot of memes out there. It's only continued to grow. And I gotta say, if you're not, I know you're not an Instagram person. I am. That's my preferred like social media outlet. But following Matt James 919 on Instagram has been so wonderful and has really elevated my viewing experience of this season, as like controversial and hard as it has been. Because
so what's the meme? What's the meme?
so yeah, Matt James is getting a lot of flack because he is now known for kissing with his eyes open.
Oh, I thought he was known for like sitting in a lawn chair in kind of like a winter coat with mittens on.
Oh, is that the meme? It was that Matt James?
Looking in a
Is that our bachelor?
this detesting way, nonsense that's going on around him.
Holding a manila envelope like,
right.
I gotta get down to business.
In the manila envelope, we have notes about what things are dear to each one of the bachelorettes. And
right.
He's constantly wondering whether he should just pitch it in the fire.
Oh my gosh. So good. Okay.
There's
so
my
Matt James meme, he posted, because so many people are making fun of him about kissing with his eyes open, which, yeah, it's just been this like whole controversial topic that I did not know existed, which is kind of hilarious. So he's also kind of getting this whole thing for charcuterie boards. Like he's gotten into charcuterie boards. And so he made one last night that was in reference to kissing with his eyes open. But then after that, he found a photo of Justin Timberlake that was also kissing his wife, Jessica Biel, with his eyes open. And he was kind of like sipping some tea and saying like, oh, so I'm the only one that is getting flack for this when Justin Timberlake, superstar, also clearly kisses with his eyes open.
Yeah, like what I don't understand about this is that we're told that eye contact is a really important way to connect with someone, and I have applauded Matt James already for the kind of mindful way in which he attempts to make the person in the room, wherever they are, the only person in the room. But then, like, when it comes to kissing someone, then we're told that it's not good to have eye contact. Because why? Because it's going to make your partner self-conscious. I've never quite understood, that whole social rule. I'll only say that, generally not to make this, but when I kiss, I kind of lose consciousness, in the same way that you do when you sneeze, except for, in the case of kissing, it's a little bit longer than a sneeze. So I'm not quite
hopefully
sure.
It is.
I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to make of this whole argument, and I feel like I've already said too much, and were I to say more, I would just get in further trouble.
Okay, well, I just thought it was hilarious. Really, I just want to encourage y'all to follow Matt James 919 because his charcuterie boards are getting pretty good.
What does that
he's
involve?
Putting some zebra cakes on there, stacked oatmeal cookies. He's really getting into it. He's getting very creative. Charcuterie boards like I have never seen, Jim. I think this is a new side hustle for him.
Yeah,
So.
I'm not positive what you're talking about. And so
Do you
let's,
know what a charcuterie board is?
I thought it had something to do with meat. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's like a snack, essentially like a chopping board that's full of like meats and cheeses, fruits, nuts. But he's started to get creative, being the stereotypical bachelor that he is. He was using some like frozen foods like pizza wings and bagel bites, and he's continued to get more and more creative with his charcuterie board, and I'm a fan. Okay, I am enjoying seeing his creativity. I do not enjoy seeing his eyes open when he is making out with these women. However, whatever, that's all I wanted to say about that. So
Is it fair to say that that his charcuterie board is maybe kind of a gustatory equivalent of his dancing?
I don't want to put those in the same category, Jim. Like,
Yeah.
actually, no, they are. I think you either love it or you hate it. And I gotta say, I love it. I think it's fun and creative. And I'm here for all of that content. Like, if you want to dance without music, I'm here for it. If you want to make ridiculous charcuterie boards, I'm here for it. I think it's fun.
Well, it's certainly fun compared to what's happening in the actual episodes.
Yeah, I guess we have to talk about that.
Because in the actual episodes, I think what we've come to realize is that a lot of people, I think, not to get too specific, but I think a lot of people looked to January 20th as being a day for America to kind of turn a page.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if The Bachelor is any indication, I think that that page is just, it's basically gotten fit in a smaller book, which is this series, where I don't think I can recall a season in which there was more hate for,
Mm-hmm.
and not even racial or gender or sexual orientation hate, just like different variety asshole hate. Um but
Just tearing down other
yeah,
women. It's just general meanness. Um, and it's one thing to kind of like make those snide remarks when you're in the ITMs in front of producers, but it is now happening like directly to each other's faces, which I think is extremely, I mean, I don't know. I think you could say one maybe is worse than the other, or they're both bad. But I think when you have no regard for just, you're saying it directly to their face, it's not making light of it. You're not funny. We're not laughing with you anymore. It's laughing at you, which is very mean.
yeah, I mean, it reminds me, the more I think about last night, it reminds me so much about the different perceptions that people in the United States at least have about what is and what isn't a reasonable argument.
Mm-hmm.
What they are and are not entitled to in a reasonable argument. And I'm sorry, but like as I make this comparison, I'm thinking about Victoria basically the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Victoria very much prizes her freedom of speech and
Mm-hmm.
exercises it
Mm-hmm.
incessantly. But what
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't, I think, understand, and what the likes of Katie at times are trying to teach her, is that just because you have a right to say something doesn't make you immune,
Right.
called on it.
Right.
And though Victoria, clearly is not going to be reined in by just about anyone on the show, that doesn't in any way mean that what she says is legitimate, is honest, is in any way productive on any level to like what the show is trying to do. And so we don't have to listen to her. And I was both surprised and relieved when she left in the middle of the show. And I am virtually positive that she'll be back because that's just how this show works. But for all of the scurrilous characters that have come in and out of this franchise over the last 20 years, she may be the worst. And that's saying a lot.
Yeah, 25 seasons.
Because she's not there even just to make trouble. Because trouble can have like dramatic consequences indirectly. She's just there to be a jerk.
Yeah.
I guess that as her ticket to fame. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've been wondering. I've been speculating a lot, purely speculation of how could anyone like reasonably make all of these choices without thinking about the repercussions or the consequences. And in my mind, the only way I can justify it is like it has to be intentional. Of like it's just so hard for me to believe that she could just like she is saying all of those things without any remorse. Like I guess the optimist in me wants to believe deep down, like, okay, there has to be some good in there somewhere, which means there has to be like she knows what she's doing. Because whenever she walked off, she went to the bathroom to go complain to the producer, but then she came out to talk crap about the rest of the women within earshot of them. Like that was such a intentional move that I think she knows exactly what she is doing. I think she is just trying to make a name for herself. Even if she is hated, I think she's like, I'm going to go down in the biggest way that I can.
I mean, does this at all sound familiar?
Yes. Yeah, which is so frustrating.
Here's what we've learned in the last 4 years.
Oh God, why? This is why The Bachelor, this is why we're going to keep tuning in, right? Because like as trivial as freaking The Bachelor is, we know it's trivial, but it also sometimes in very scary ways, it parallels the rest of the world.
And here's what Victoria knows. That if you make a constant spectacle out of yourself, in part by being the loudest voice in the room, a camera will follow you. It can't help itself.
Yep.
And, not as many people, present company included, as should be, are generally willing to pick up the remote and turn
it off. Yeah.
And
FOMO. So, we don't want to miss out.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder maybe if there is a valuable lesson in here that I'm observing, but I'm not learning. Because what was interesting is that once the particular issue of Victoria was dealt with via the rose ceremony, it was like we had like the fallout that had to be cleaned up. So we've got MJ and Jasenia in their like incessant back and forth, which on one hand isn't as toxic as Victoria, but on the other hand, is a situation where you've got two people on each side who've like taken up this this opportunity to throttle each other. I mean, Victoria goes around and throttles whomever she wants to. right? But these two, MJ and Jasenia, it's like they have both entered the Thunderdome of their own fashion. And at this point are like, this is what this is all about. It's not about really Matt James.
Mm-hmm.
Me making sure that I stand up for myself. Well,
it kind of just, I think, puts at the forefront who's there for the right reasons. And clearly, the only person I think is there for the right reasons, well, I don't know. I don't know that any of them are anymore, but Katie, it continues to do the right thing. I feel like everyone else is just very hyper aware of how they're going to come and on live TV to the rest of the world. So
I think if the I think if the purge were completed at the beginning of the next episode with sorry, I'm not giving this rose out, you're both going home.
mm-hmm.
Then it's possible that what's left of the cast could find their way out of this mess. But then we learn
Heather Martin's coming, so no, it's gonna continue.
And see, I love it when you refer to these people that I have a vague memory of from a previous season by their first and last names, because what it tells me that Junebug is now on camera.
She's got to get her 15 minutes of fame too.
The clock is ticking, Junebug.
Yeah.
What it tells me is that this person, who may be just a cameo in my own personal memory of the show, has reclaimed their 15 minutes via social media. So please remind me who
Heather Martin is best known from Colton's season as the girl who had never been kissed.
Thank you.
And she's friends with Hannah Brown, also former Bachelorette,
yes.
and lives in the LA scene. And so they hang out all the time. And supposedly Hannah Brown, friends with Matt James. So it's just kind of all like, is this really happening? Like, you would have had a chance to meet in real life if you so chose, because you guys are in the same circle. So there, I just kind of feel like this is all, I mean, it's all very much producer manipulation. And now another former contestant, I'm sorry, I'm bringing so much, like, there's so much happening outside of the freaking show itself that is like impacting how we watch the show. But anyways, Dylan Barber.
And by we, she means not me.
Me, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's some things that you see on like E-News or I don't know, some articles.
Say more about Dylan Barber, whoever
Okay, Dylan Barber. He was tweeting apparently that he was making some snide remarks about the Bachelor franchise, and I guess made a comment specifically that the franchise itself did Heather Martin dirty. Like they're doing her dirty.
Dylan Barber?
He was on the last Paradise, and he got together with Hannah Godwin. Hannah G.
Dylan.
He's, I mean, I like them all. Pretty boy. He was like Gaga eyes only for Hannah G. And it was like the fight for Hannah G with Blake and like all these other guys. But Dylan was loyal and they ended up together.
I remember Dylan.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Dylan.
He was like one of there's like the big brothers in Paradise, and then there's the little brothers. And
yeah, that's a good way to describe him.
Yeah, he was one of the little brothers.
Yeah.
Which does, that's not necessarily a compliment. But
no, not at all. He pesters everyone.
So I'm going to see if maybe we can retract ourselves from the rabbit hole that is the latest Instagram stuff about so suffice it to say tell me if I'm wrong, that Heather Martin is an unnecessary wrinkle that is to be added, uh, a potentially problematic wrinkle, but how much of that is just in the imaginations of our social media savvy friends, and may it be that she's just cast off like, you know, the other several dozen additional women that have made their way to this season of The Bachelor since Matt James inaugurated it.
It'll be interesting to see what happens, because I honestly think they probably have met in real life. And so I think that Matt James is probably going to have a little bit more just obligation to handle that situation with a little more care and finesse than
Yeah.
just sending her away. Or I don't know. So far,
Yeah.
I've appreciated most of, especially this past episode. I really liked how he handled things. He wasn't afraid to hold women accountable, essentially. I know it was really hard for him to do. So we'll see what he does with Miss Heather Martin. I don't know. Yeah. What else do you want to talk about, Jim?
Well, so one other thing that I feel like continues to come across my scanner when it comes to the show is that I do sometimes wonder if the show really does have a foot to stand on when it comes to addressing certain social issues, either head on or kind of tangentially. When it also sends its own mixed messages and has its own particular hypocrisy. And so let me see if I can be concrete about this. I'm thinking about two different situations from this episode juxtaposed. One in which we are exploring the particular sins of Victoria, in what in particular she says about the women that she talks about, that, you know, when it's not just dumb, because Victoria can be really simple, just what, like, you're a doofus, or, you know, like she can make just stupid remarks, but then some she makes cutting remarks. And we as viewers are led to believe that there are women in the crowd, and maybe the show itself, that are sympathetic to what can happen in situations like that. Okay. And then, by the same token, we have a show that really has a hard time claiming implicitly or explicitly that it is past objectifying its contestants, or cast members. And here I'm thinking, you know, not just about the necessary clips of whoever the lead is for the season taking a shower.
The shower scenes, yeah.
In the early
Tayshia
episode.
coming out of the pool.
Tayshia coming out of the pool, right? But also in what has become known as the Pretty Woman date, right? In which any princess dreams that any female contestant would, should have about, you know, getting a moment with their possible Prince Charming. Every time I see a date like that, or I see a clip that includes water and bathing suits, I can't help but think to myself, Jim, you're a sucker, right? Because you continue to have faith in this show when it says what you want it to say.
Yeah.
It used to say all sorts of things that you find to be
not okay. Yeah, problematic. I feel like the two words, we started the series with vulnerability. Vulnerable was the word, and now toxic is the new word of choice. But you are exactly right, Jim. Like I am struggling so much right now in the midst of this season. We're more than halfway through the season, as Chris Harrison told us. and I'm just struggling because I want so much more for the show. Like I think everyone that watches the show, one, they love the drama. Yeah, sure. And we're all a little bit of like the hopeless romantics, but also we know that it's problematic. And yet I think we all want more for the show. And it has given us some hope in increasing some of the diversity within the show, and still continues to do a lot of problematic things within the show itself. And the sexism, the misogyny, like that still continues, and it's just very hard to watch and endorse and sponsor. So I don't even know. At the Pretty Woman date, just made me cringe so much. Especially especially in the timing and sequencing of when it happened, because it was right after Matt James sent Victoria home, for sending Anna home, who was the like culprit of spreading a rumor about Brittany being an escort. And now we have the Pretty Woman date, which is just kind of like a nod to that. In my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, like, could they not have done it a little bit differently? Like, I don't know. I don't know if that was intentional,
Yeah.
but I couldn't help but connect those things. I was like, okay, we have a theme here of escort that is a rumor. And then now we're having the Pretty Woman date. I'm just, yeah, we do not need to be endorsing all these materialistic things. The show is good when it focuses on people's stories and real conversations. That is what I enjoyed from last season with Glacia. Like, the men that were on that season had lives outside of wanting to become influencers, and they were compelling. And that is what I enjoyed about the show. And I feel like this season is letting me down. Matt James isn't letting me down. The season is letting me down.
Well, I'll only say that I think I mentioned this to you before. Like, my viewership of the franchise did not begin with The Bachelor. Um, it began with the first season of The Bachelorette.
Hmm.
And I'm not quite sure what, like, the original premise of the show didn't do that much for me. I liked the idea of, things being flipped. And then by then I was kind of like, the two versions of the show weren't quite as inbred as they are now, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette.
Right.
But I've always enjoyed Bachelorette seasons more. In part because I feel like there are more possibilities in that dynamic for something kind of nicely countercultural to happen. Whereas it's not impossible that a bachelor could one season come into the show and say, like, we're not doing a Pretty Woman date because I don't like what that says about the value we are supposedly finding in these women. And I'm not just going to not have a Pretty Woman date on my season, but I'm going to make a point of, like, saying those things as we head to an alternative. Um, and I think maybe naively, I thought that, those kind of tables being turned, always there as possibilities for The Bachelor, but end up being, Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown for like the 20th season in a row, or the 25th. So I I just think that, as if I needed a reminder, and despite the fact that we have a Black Bachelor, as our lead, there's some things that the Bachelor just can't give up, you know, and I don't know if ultimately that's going to mean I'm going to give it up because I just can't really take it anymore. The one thing I will say that, I'll cut the show a little bit of slack. I think that when it comes to these issues of progressive views on relationship and and more regressive views on relationship. I think many people like to think that they are all in on turning the page. But, the reality of the way that these things are socialized in us as we're growing up is that we're not always going to feel like that is the natural thing to do. And I think that it makes all the sense in the world that there are going to be times in any of these characters' lives on the show when they're going to take a step or two or three back.
Can I ask a quick question, Jim? Because I know that you know the show a little bit more than I do in the history. Has there ever been like the Pretty Woman date for a man on The Bachelorette?
No, I don't think there has been. And I'll tell you what I think that the version of that date would be.
What would that be?
I think it would be the Bachelorette taking her chosen cast member out to go shopping and, buy him something other than Bahama shorts to wear in 35-degree temperatures.
Turtlenecks.
It would come across. I mean, what's interesting is that, like, I think it would come across as patronizing and in a cute way. Like, oh, if I could, you are, like a
toy. Yeah, like you're my doll.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that we would all find that, not all of us, but many of us would find that maybe a little more endearing, if sexist in its own way. But I think that the alternative is always going to be more prevalent in shows like this, just because I think it's more prevalent in society. The Bachelor tries as hard as it can to objectify the men who are its leads, but it's hard for them to hold a candle to the objectification of all the women on the cast.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, my friends.
Yeah, there's so much more we could talk about and say, but honestly, we are just going to have to stay tuned and see. Come on, please let the season kind of have a comeback. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think this is around the time when that could happen.
Right.
But I think it's at best even odds that it will.
Yeah.
So
we'll stay tuned. Thank you all for watching. Let us know if you have any other comments, suggestions, any input whatsoever. If you kiss with your eyes open, let us know that too. Most of the people that I know so far, they're saying it's weird. So
if you feel like your time would be better spent having Sarah and I each in our own places make up our dream charcuterie boards.
Oh yeah. We could do a little show and tell.
We'll call it Pruning the Final Rose. It will have nothing to do with The Bachelor. It will have to do with our personality as finger food on a wooden board. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh. Now I'm really hungry. So
yeah, I was gonna say, if it's edible, I might just be in.
Okay.
I like roses.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, stay safe and well. We'll see you next time.
Hang in there.